Ciao, Auður.
Buongiorno.
Buongiorno.
Piacere.
Piacere mio. Auður Ava Ólafsdóttir, Icelandic, former professor of art history at the University of Iceland, former director of the Institute of Art Studies at the University of Iceland, is the author of 8 novels. The 9th is, you are finished your 9th novels right now.
You're translating it? No, you're translating the 8th one. 8th one, yeah.
I'm finishing the translation of the 8th one. I'm Stefano Rosatti, and I am a former colleague at the University of Iceland. We had the office just close by in the old days. I'm teaching Italian literature and language at the University of Iceland, and I'm the translator of all your novels into Italian for the publishing house.
Yeah, and I left university. I'm just a writer today.
Yes, you left the university like how long ago?
Well, like 8 years ago.
8 years ago.
7 years.
Just to be a writer.
Yeah, I'm an ex-art historian.
Ex-artist.
Yeah.
Yes. Auður established herself first in France and then internationally with the novel The Greenhouse, her third novel, released in Iceland in 2007 and internationally known as, probably internationally more known as Rosa Candida. Her latest novel, Eden, that I'm translating now, was released in Iceland last year in 2022, and Auður has obtained numerous national and international awards. Probably the most prestigious was the Médicis étrangère that you obtained in 2019 for your novel
Mrs. Landa.
Mrs. Landa. So we are here to basically talk about translation and translators. You are an author today, translated in more than 30 languages. And my first question is this one: since you can read like 6 or more languages yourself, have you ever translated, or have you ever thought about translating literary work?
Yeah. Well, I have, into Icelandic, into my mother tongue. I have translated a few plays from English, French, and Danish by female writers. Among them, a play written by Marguerite Duras, who was actually an author I got to know when I got to know French. When I moved to France to do my studies in art history and art theory, that was, something, a new world that opened to me, to be able to read books in French and to discover authors that were not translated into Icelandic. So I basically discovered that fiction could be anything. I mean, it was like a total freedom. You could do anything. It was not the limited range of writings I had read in Icelandic before. But I have become, after having taught at the university for like 20 years, I have become very selfish, very egoistic, because of my time to write. Now I would like to have more time to write, so I will leave the translations to you, the professionals.
Well, I'm not a professional translator, but anyway, thank you. No, because many great writers sometimes take maybe a pause in their work of writing and yeah, sometimes they prefer translating something and then to turn back again to writing.
I can relate to that. I can understand that, but you know, I have so many books, unwritten books inside me that I think I would need like 200 years to finish them. So that's a bit my, you know, priority, or yeah.
I see. Maybe in 20 years you will.
Yeah, you never know. But the interesting thing is that when you live abroad, like I did for so many years, you start to think of your own mother tongue otherwise, a bit like a foreign language. And I think actually years before I started writing, because I started rather late, in my late 30s, and but years before I started to, like a foreigner abroad, you know, speaking a foreign language with an accent, being a foreigner. I started to discover my own language, like something strange, a foreign language. So I think I became a writer between two languages, somewhere on a rock in between, in the Atlantic Ocean, between my island and the continent. So I became a foreigner. I had a foreign view on my own language and saw how much different it was from French and obviously Italian. And I learned to know that every language has its own thought and a philosophy, and you know, that's one of the difficulties, of course, being a translator, different mentalities, and yeah.
It's not just a question of knowing the language, of course. But yeah, I know for a fact that you value the work of translators very highly. And before talking about the relationship that you, as a successful writer today, have with your translator, I'd like you to tell us about your relationship as a reader with translated literary writing, literary works.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm just like any ordinary reader when I read translated novels or fictions or works. Yeah, I remember some years ago I read something that you might consider as a bad translation into Icelandic from English many years ago. But I quite enjoyed it because I could see the original text. I could really enjoy I could hear the voice of the writer kind of writing it, like in a simultaneously. I saw it before me, the original text, so I knew how it was, because it was, like you say, it was maybe too direct as a translation.
Maybe as a reader, also as a writer, how did you become aware of the importance of good translation, of the importance of the role of translators? Have you always been like aware of this, or from time to time you became more and more conscious of
I'm conscious of. I respect translators so much. Yeah, I do. I really. I mean, my specialty is to write in a minority marginal language that no one understands, you know, except those 350,000 people and a few precious translators. And so, yeah, I'm very much aware of differences of languages. And even if I enjoyed this translation that I quoted earlier, I don't think the author would have been happy with a bad translation. But then again, I have read some books translated, in original languages when I was young, and then again later, and it was not the same book. And to some extent, my lack of knowledge of that language helped imagination, and so I created maybe another book, a different book in my head, and then I read it years later. And a reader always puts their own understanding and what they know of the world in everything they read. Yeah.
Yes, it happens.
As we are not the same persons, as we were before.
It happens even when you read the same book in your mother tongue. I mean, when you are 20, in your 20s, it's not the same that reading the same book when you are 55.
Some books you read over and over again, and you always see something new in them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about your technical, professional attitude towards the translator. That is to say, how do you work with the translators of your books? I know that at least the Italian translator, you work personally with the Italian translator, with the English one, and with the French one. You know each other's, and you discuss the translations and so on.
There are my experience is that there are two types of translators that translate from Icelandic. Either they are really linguistic geniuses or nerds, or especially the younger ones, and they have a collection of languages. They have already learned all the Nordic languages, and it's like climbing mountains. There's only one peak missing, and that's the most difficult. They're collecting languages, and there's only the most difficult, peak to climb, and that's Icelandic. Or there is some beautiful love history behind. A person falls in love with an Icelander and is forced to live on this volcanic island with 200 active volcanoes touching the Arctic Circle, and learn the language. And for instance, you're a professor in Italian at the university, but of course a translator is probably often a mixture of the two of it. Very interested into languages and a language genius as you are. So so my relationship with. I'm
sorry if I interrupt you. I'm the second type of.
You're the second. You're the second.
To Iceland because
of love. I know you fall in the second category. I
I'm
know
not
that.
A genius of the language.
I know that, and you just stuck up there.
Yes.
With children and family, and you had to find something to do because you didn't have enough
during
to
the
do
long winters. Winters.
Being professor at the university. I know that's your story, but my relationship. One of the best things about being a translated author is having known translators and have become friends with translators. So that's maybe why I like this contact with translators, but it depends. If they live in Iceland like you do, and like my English translator does, I have a more personal contact. And then of course when your book is translated to over 30 languages, you don't know anything about 90% of those translations. And some of them, because there's a lack of translators from Icelandic in so many countries, and in others there's only one of them with a waiting list of authors. So many of those translations are made from English or French, and that's why I may be a bit of a, I don't know, a control freak. So I like to read the English version and the French versions just to know if it's my book. It's the book that I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my next question was exactly this one. What is your relationship with translators that you don't know, translators that translate your works in languages that you don't know, like Chinese, for instance? But you have already answered this.
Yeah, partly. But you know, I'm always very happy when I get letters, emails from translators. They often apologize to bother me, but I'm so happy, really, to get in contact, in personal contact. And they often actually have the same questions, the same problematic with the same book. So I've even thought of, should I make a list of those problems when I've got like 5 emails asking the same 3 questions? Yeah.
That's what you did for your latest novel, which was published last year in Icelandic.
Yeah, and that you are translating.
I'm translating now, and it probably will be published in Italy next year. You sent us, translators, a kind of a memorandum with some issues regarding the translation, regarding maybe obscure points of your novel, in order to help us translators in doing the right thing.
Yeah, I know.
And I found this very interesting, from the professional point of view, very interesting from a technical point. I don't think it's a usual thing. I mean.
Yeah, but you're right, and you know it's. Well, I often think when I write something, now my translators will hate me, but my last novel, Eden, that is a book about things in the world that are disappearing, like languages and nature. And the Icelandic language is one of the characters in the book. So it's actually an ode to this strange, antique language, like the Latin of the Nordic languages. And I absolutely wanted to write one book in my career that was like about Icelandic. So I wanted this strange language somehow I wanted the reader to understand it, so I wanted a bit of parts of Icelandic. For instance, that you use the same word to speak about glacial river and a sheep, and that it's related to time also. And we have the same word in Icelandic to say divorce someone and to understand someone. Separasi. And then to my knowledge, Icelandic is the only language that uses the same rooted word to speak about home and the world, heima or heimur. So I really, I wanted there to be a small bits of Icelandic in the book. So that was my meaning with this manual to the translator. And then I forgot to send it, Stefano. I think you only got it, and maybe one other translator. Yeah.
I found this idea, as I told you, really, really interesting and very useful. Very useful for me. I'm not regarding this like a kind of control freak.
I'm happy. I'm so happy. I'm so relieved. So relieved.
No, on the contrary, on the contrary. Let's maybe continue talking about the Icelandic language. So when you write in your mother tongue, you feel that you are carrying out among other things, of course, sort of mission. Icelandic is spoken by very few people, 360,000, maybe a bit more, not much more. So I kind of, you see your act of writing as a kind of mission, also in order to safeguarding a heritage, which is carried out by your mother tongue, which is an heritage that, of course, implies an entire view of the world, a culture in the broadest meaning of this word.
Yeah, actually, I think writing in Icelandic is actually the only thing Icelandic writers have in common, and there are like 6,000 languages spoken in the world. Depends on how you count dialects, and every 2 weeks one of those languages dies out. So by the end of this century, 90% of the languages will have died out, and that could very well be Icelandic. But I'm not sure if I have any mission. Yes, I would really like Icelandic to survive, and with 100 different words to speak about snow or wind or rain, depends on where it comes from, but I think translation, there are many different theories, as you know better than me about translations, but I always feel that a translation is somehow neither the original language or the mother tongue of the translator. It's somewhere in between. So maybe you've got your views. Can I ask you a question, Stefano? So what's the main, because Italian and Icelandic, they're so different. So what's the biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge, there are many biggest challenges in translating from Icelandic. If I have to just maybe more improvise maybe and thinking about something, I should say that one of the biggest issues in translating into Icelandic into Italian is that Icelandic is a reflective language. That is to say, one word could be declined in 12 different forms, with article or not with an article, in singular, plural, 4 genders, 4 cases like in Latin, while in Italian you have just singular and plural if we are talking about nouns. And
even the names of persons, they are, my name has 4 different.
It could be declined in 4 different forms, while Italian has just basically 2 forms, singular and plural. And so you can use in Icelandic, in your mother tongue, you can use the same word with short space between, and it's the same word, but it's declined in different ways, so the same word could be, or is, actually another word, declined in nominative or genitive, in singular and plural, or with article or not. And in Italian there is still this kind of, let's say, taboo that says that if you repeat the same word too often, that's not, it doesn't work. So you always have to find a synonym or a kind of.
Yeah, there is a different musicality in each language, and I think actually a good translation. A good translation was. Are you going to ask that? Yeah.
No, that was my last question. What is a good translation?
Okay. Yeah, of course it has to be true to the original text. It has to be fidel. But one of the most important things is to get the music. There is a musicality in each language that's different, in Italian and in Icelandic. But to somehow get the original music, because with each, at least of my novels, there's a special music that goes with the voice of the character. And the most important part is to be able to translate what's between the lines and between the words. Because in my case, I cut a lot. And it's between the lines that you find the voice of the conscience of this strange main character, in my case.
So let's say that a good translation is the translation that maintains also the silence between lines into the
absolutely, yeah,
into the language. But about musicality, if I may say, one of our first conversations about translations, when I started translating your third novel, but it was the first one which was translated in other languages, Avleggjarin, Rosa Candida. And I remember that you told me exactly this, about the musicality. I asked you, when you write, what brings you on? I mean, what is there? And you said that the main thing you were thinking about when you write something is the musicality. You have to listen. You yourself have to listen to your voice, written voice, and if it works for the ear, that's a good thing, and it works. If it doesn't work, you just...
Writing is listening to your inner voice,
And that helped me a lot in translating your works, because apart from the fidelity to the language and so on, I as a translator, I decided to follow your path and listen to the musicality of my translation. If it doesn't work, if it's fidel, but it doesn't work from a musical kind, music in a musical sense, I have to work it more on
I
that.
think that's a good meeting point for a writer and a translator, and translation
and of course,
the original language.
As you say, the musicality of the two languages is totally different, of course. Sometimes not so different. Then
we have to find some way to dance, with those two kinds of musics.
I hope we will dance again in the future, and I just thank you very much for this conversation.
Grazie Stefano.
Grazie a te.